Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely wild. We are unpacking one of the most unexpected underdog stories of political disruption in recent memory. If you follow electoral strategy at all, you already know that completely upending a historical status quo is incredibly rare. I mean, usually political landscapes evolve over generations, right? They move at a totally glacial pace. But today, we're breaking down the sudden, explosive rise of a brand new political force in Tamil Nadu. We're going to look strictly at the numbers, the structural strategy, and the mechanics of this movement to understand exactly how a new era was ushered in, practically overnight, bypassing decades of deeply established political tradition.
So, how exactly do you break an unbreakable political system? It's kind of the ultimate puzzle in modern political science. We're looking at a deeply entrenched system here and asking how a brand new entity managed to completely shatter what everyone simply accepted as the permanent reality on the ground. Normally, political change is highly incremental. A slight shift in voter demographics here, maybe a minor coalition adjustment there. But what we are exploring today isn't a gradual shift. It is a sudden, massive structural fracture of the established rules of the game. It changed the electoral math in a way veteran analysts literally thought was impossible.
Section 1. The Entrenched Political Giants. DMK, AIIDMK dominance.
For decades, Tamil Nadu's political landscape was completely locked down by the massive, heavy dominance of the DMK and the AIA-DMK. And look, these two organizations didn't just win elections. They built immense, inescapable grassroots machinery. They dictated the terms of every single debate. They controlled the political narrative from the urban centers right down to the most rural districts. And honestly, they absorbed almost all the political oxygen in the room. Historically, there was absolutely zero space for newcomers. Anyone trying to enter this environment wasn't just fighting an opposing candidate, they were fighting deeply rooted institutions woven into the very cultural and economic fabric of the region. Challengers basically faced a completely blank slate, lacking the funding, the legacy, and the local ground game to even stand a chance. When you're dealing with a fierce political duopoly, like the one that gripped Tamil Nadu, the voting landscape becomes so heavily conditioned that it fundamentally changes voter psychology. It makes it nearly impossible for a third party to gain any sort of meaningful traction. Voters become conditioned to view the election as a strict binary choice. The prevailing wisdom is always that a vote for anyone other than the top two is just a wasted vote. Breaking through that psychological and structural barrier requires something completely outside the traditional political playbook. It requires a massive external force capable of generating its own gravity, totally independent of the established political ecosystem.
Section 2. The unexpected challenger emerges. Actor Vijay steps in.
Then, out of nowhere, actor Vijay announces his political debut, instantly changing the calculus of the entire region. By stepping off the silver screen and onto the rigid political stage, he introduced a completely fresh face with an entirely different kind of pre-existing infrastructure. Now, in southern Indian politics, cinema and governance obviously have a long, intertwined history, but entering an already solidified duopoly, that is a massive challenge. When a major cultural figure makes this transition, they effectively bypass the traditional backroom political ladders. They don't need to spend decades building name recognition. Instead, they speak directly to the public through a megaphone built on years of massive public goodwill and highly organized fan networks that can quickly pivot into functioning as political cadres right there on the ground.
So he officially launches his new party, Tamilnaga Vetri Kazhagam, or TVK for short. This transition from individual cultural icon to a formalized political organization set the stage for an intense operational challenge. You suddenly had a brand new party infrastructure attempting to go head-to-head with multi-generational political machines that have managed every local ward for decades. Launching a party means fielding candidates, establishing polling booth committees, and mobilizing millions of non-traditional voters, all without the safety net of veteran political strategists. On paper, structural convention dictates that the new party just gets squeezed out by the logistics alone. But the sheer momentum of this movement entirely defied those conventional operational limits.
Section 3. A shocking election upset. TVK's historic win.
93. Let that number sink in for a second, because the gravity of this within the context of Tamil Nadu politics cannot be overstated. It represents an unprecedented electoral earthquake. In a rigid duopoly, merely winning a handful of seats as a new third party is generally considered a huge success, a sign that you can maybe hold the balance of power. Securing 93 seats? That is a total paradigm shift. It means the electorate didn't just register a minor protest vote against the establishment. No, they mandated an entirely new direction. The voter base fractured in a way that bypassed the established gatekeepers completely, pulling demographics from across the spectrum to consolidate behind a totally unproven political entity.
And when you look at the identities of these 93 victors, it reveals the true mechanics of this disruption. These are representatives of the newly formed TVK, sure, but more critically, they are overwhelmingly first-time MLAs. They are the literal disruptors of the DMK-AIMDK dominance. TVK didn't achieve this massive victory by recruiting a slate of seasoned politicians who defected from the major parties. Actually, they successfully fielded and elected an army of completely fresh, first-time legislators. This effectively neutralized the old guard's monopoly on legislative power and injected 93 completely new voices straight into the state assembly. It's a remarkably rare instance of an electorate wiping the slate clean, prioritizing entirely new representation over legacy political experience.
Section 4. Powering the New Era. Immediate Action. 200. If 93 was the number that completely shattered the old system, 200 became the immediate focal point in the new administration's governing strategy. The incoming leadership understood a fundamental rule of political disruption. An underdog victory of this magnitude absolutely needs to be validated instantly. A mandate built on the promise of sudden change can evaporate so fast if the new government gets bogged down in slow bureaucratic transitions. They needed a bold, recognizable action that cut through the noise, and they centered their initial policy rollout precisely around this number to establish immediate, undeniable credibility. That action was an immediate policy of 200 free units of electricity. By instantly instituting this policy, TVK directly linked the shock of their electoral victory to a tangible, economic reality for the everyday citizens of Tamil Nadu. This strategy was deployed to deliver a highly visible impact across households, regardless of their prior political affiliations. Rather than starting off with abstract legislative debates, the new government prioritized a policy that literally alters the monthly financial calculus of the average voter. It serves as a continuous, practical signal in millions of homes that executive power has officially changed hands, aiming to solidify their sudden, shocking rise with immediate economic delivery. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we are left with a massive, critical question regarding the future of the region's politics. What happens next when an established dominance is so suddenly upended by a newcomer? We've just analyzed how actor Vijay and TVK systematically shattered a decades-old duopoly, brought a massive wave of first-time MLAs into the assembly, and immediately rolled out a highly visible energy policy. But this shift leaves us looking at the wider, long-term ripple effects. When a historically unbreakable system is finally broken, it fundamentally redefines what the electorate believes is possible. It raises some serious questions about the vulnerability of other seemingly permanent political giants. Thank you so much for diving into this structural breakdown with me today. Keep this question in mind as we watch this brand new era unfold.